I mean, I chatted to officer cadets when I was training them at Sandhurst, and they're quite jealous. And in some ways, I get it, because I got to play the game straight off the bat. There was no, the comparison is like you're training to be a Premier League footballer, but you never get on the pitch. Like, I was straight onto the pitch as a substitute at half time. It was the back end of a tour, straight into the middle of it, battle-hardened platoon, battle-hardened company. And I was learning from people who were at the top of their game at that point. Whereas the cadets now, they might get a training task to Ukraine, or they might get Estonia, but it's not, it's not seeing the elephant, as Civil War veterans used to say. Wow. And at least I got to see the elephant, and I guess that's something I think you can take forward and know that you pushed yourself and you did it, and you didn't bottle it, and you didn't make a hash of it, and so you can walk away feeling pretty proud, and that's a good thing, I think.
And did you see much change in the way the elephant behaved towards UK, US forces over the several tours that you did?
Yeah, huge change. So first tour was still gunfights. It was the tail end of like the Western shootout era. There were IEDs, but they weren't kind of the all-encompassing threat that they were on later tours. You could still manoeuvre. You didn't have to do the helm and snake where everyone's behind the bomber man with the mine detector. So we still had elements of that. You could drive pretty much where you wanted. But then on Herrick 11, they just had that summer before Herrick 10, Panther's Claw, the single biggest 6-month casualty rotation. Herrick 11 was the second biggest, actually. So, but to be fair, 7 and 8 were the other two. So I served on 3 of the 4 most casualty intensive. But my early tours, it was gunfight injuries. And my later tours, the brigade, as the op minimisers came over, it was all IEDs. It was all IEDs by 2010. So yeah, you saw a huge difference.
And as a young officer, I mean, that level of responsibility comes into the people on the ground. How much of that sort of plays on your mind then and today, and how did that change from the first tour through to the sort of later years?
Well, first tour, I think I was learning the basics, because you do the training pipeline. You do Sandhurst as a leadership course. You do Brecon as your infantry specialisation, and to go from that into straight onto operations was a really natural progression. Like the first time rounds came in, I just knew what to do instantaneously, because I'd just been doing it for practice for nearly a year and a half. So it just clicked in really easily. But then you have to get used to what effective enemy fire is. Yeah. It's not just a crack and thump anymore. It's like, are you taking casualties? Are rounds landing at your feet? No. If not, crack on. And you get kind of blasé about that after a little bit of time. If that round isn't effective, you're like, yeah, whatever, keep going. And that learning progression I had by my second tour, quite honestly. So that's when you're really into the swing of things. And I think from a leader's perspective, it was always my biggest worry, that I'd make a decision that would get someone killed. Like, that's what would keep me up at night. I'd always try and be the first one out of the fob and the last one back in, which isn't good Northern Ireland tactics, but we didn't have that threat that there was a sniper going to hit you the minute you left the fob. So I'd always try and be the first man and then last man back in. And that was my concern, just making a bad decision that got somebody else killed, and that did play on my mind.